Welcome to Beyond the Table. I'm Donald Gibson, and joining me today is Trey Gibson. And Trey is the creative arts director here at Mercy Gate Church. More importantly, he's my son, and he's probably the most creative person that I know. Trey, you have more gifts and talents in your little finger than I got in my whole body. And to be honest with you, I am oftentimes so jealous, but I'm also the benefactor of your creativity. And so I find it fitting that today you're the one joining me on this initial podcast to talk about Beyond the Table, because it really was your brainchild idea to come up with this to really supplement or even potentially replace what we were doing with Innovate. So talk to me a little bit about just some of these thoughts.
Yeah, so I think the big thing for me was everything you always leave after like Sunday services. You know, you're studying for like a week, praying into like what to speak on, and you know, I know more than most. You're always like, you have like 4 more hours to teach, you know, and you're always saying every Sunday is like, oh, I got to end early, you know, I want to go on this rabbit trail. So I think we just needed a big avenue, and people always want more too. It's weird. We have like a really weird church where, you know, you can preach for an hour and a half and everyone's like, man, I wish you would have just kept going, especially when you like teach. Yeah. Like that's a big thing. Like, you know, anytime you preach, you're super excited, very engaging, and people love watching that. But when you just sit down and you talk, because I think growing up, I remember you'd always get frustrated at the church or people, like, you know, everyone does. And you would always be like, what would you say? I wish I could just be a professor at some college or something like that. And I think that's really where you shine a lot of the times, is just teaching.
Yeah, I love teaching. I love teaching when you see the results, when you see people take the information and really apply it to their lives. And I do. I love that. I think it's the reward of seeing people grow, seeing people flourish. And they don't have to grow a lot. Just a little bit of development and growth and change. Man, that excites me. You know, I think that's why I love communicating to leaders, because oftentimes I get invited to come speak to huge crowds, and I say no. Yeah. And they're like, I've been opportunity. They're like, I'll put you in front of 150,000 people. And I'm like, right. Nah, I don't want to do that. I don't need a photo op. Right. But what, you know, the same group says, hey, I'll put you in front of 500 leaders. Yeah. Whether it's pastors or in the business community. Now, that one's hard for me to say no to, because I realize if you impact leaders, you'll impact multiplied people. Yeah. And so
I think because at first we were thinking the podcast will be called Let's Talk. Yeah. And so, we'll just expand on your sermons, and that's all we'll kind of do. You know, we'll have a 20 to 30 minute one for people that want to digest that. And for the crazy people, we'll have an hour and a half. That's like the Donald Gibson Show, 24/7, you know, and people would love that and would so like buy into that, which is awesome. But that was our Let's Talk format early on. Yeah. And then we thought, well, what about a seat at the table? And I know you have a huge passion, like you were saying, those 10 people, because you have like a grace thing on you that's like huge, and I envy that, but also I'm like, it's so frustrating as well, because like everyone will give up on somebody, and you're just like, oh no, they're gonna, you know, in the 11th hour they're gonna be a rock star, you know, and that's crazy. I don't know where that comes from, but I think for a seat at the table, it is talking about those 10 people, you know, come together. Here's like practical things you can do. And I think early on you were talking to me, what really impassioned me about what you're saying, the Ritz-Carlton story. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, people need to like, every time we start the podcast, we just need to tell this story, because that's like you in a nutshell. And I don't know if you want to explain the Ritz-Carlton story.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is I had played in a golf tournament and had, there were 5 flights, and I won my flight. Yeah. And they put all of us winners into a bowl. They're going to draw a name to go participate in another golf tournament, free of charge, to out at the Ritz-Carlton in Southern California. Well, I won. Yeah, and so I got to fly out there, and I was a nobody. I mean, still am a nobody, but I was at the time pastoring in Freeport, Texas. Now, we were the fastest growing church in that area. We had grown from 7 to 30 people.
Yeah.
And so, but I flew out there, and I was among really the who's who in the leadership world. And I didn't realize that. And I was sitting at a table with the top 5 pastors of the nation in 1997. Jeez. And what struck me that was so cool was nobody played games. They didn't care the size of my church. They didn't treat me any different. They made me feel valued at the table. Yeah. And so I ended up writing down notes of the kind of person I wanted to be from that experience. And so I just made a determination, you know what, that's the way I'm going to treat other people. I'm going to believe in people. I'm not going to play the stupid preacher games that I detest.
The ladder.
Or the hierarchical ladder game, you know, he with the most toys wins. Well, I don't have time for all that. I don't care. And so that's just kind of why and how that began to develop in me. Yeah. And so it was pretty cool. Another neat story about the Ritz. When I pulled up, this is my first time to ever stay at a Ritz-Carlton. Yeah. Okay. And so I pull up, and the guy comes out to pick up my luggage and just, help me. And so I do that, and he could tell I didn't belong there.
Yeah, just while you're just like, okay.
Yeah. He could just see I was nervous. I didn't belong in that place. And he said, first time you ever been at the Ritz? I said, yes, sir, it is. He said, well, let me show you my hotel. And he took me all over that place, and he treated it as if it was his own property. Yeah. And he was just simply, the concierge at the front desk. Yeah. And it was absolutely amazing. And it really set a pattern of how I think people should serve in business, how people should serve in leadership, how people should serve in church for sure. Yeah. That, man, own the thing. Because honestly, I would not have known if he was not the owner.
Right.
You know? And so I think it's just whether it's at a table or whether it's, that guy showing me around, it really left a mark on me of the kind of people and the kind of person I really want to be. And I think if more leadership aspired to that, we would see a bigger impact and we begin to change culture. Yeah. And so that's why we went through all these variations and renditions of, a seat at the table, and I just kind of landed on the idea of, you know what? How about beyond the table? Yeah. Because there's a lot of good conversations that happen at the table. Yeah. And there's a lot of good teaching that happens at the table. But what I've learned is that people don't leave the table with it.
Right, yeah.
They don't take it and apply it.
Yeah, and I think the table really shows that you have to be at this place. And I think that's something we didn't see early on is, at the table was talking about, hey, you need to come up to this place to then be part of this something. And that's not like the concierge saying, this is my hotel, like taking ownership of it and, making you feel invited and that you belong. And I remember when you were first telling me the story, you were able to go back that day when it started and you were able to feel confident just walking in amongst all these rock stars, and you were able to be like him, this is my hotel. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times that's kind of where your heart lies is you want to be the concierge to people, to leadership and to Jesus. Yeah. And that's crazy because like we're saying, most people, they're very gifted, they're very talented, but it's hard not to go for that ladder. It's hard not to be like, oh, well, success in Jesus and the church. I have to have all these things, these toys. It's all about, I have 15 campuses now, $1 million, all this stuff, and we forget that, it's just about Jesus. and that's why I always told you, like, I never want to work for a church. Right. Yeah. I think I used to have like these things that I didn't like about the church. And over that time, it's changed a lot. Now I love the church. And I'm like, okay, well, it's a hospital for broken people. Yeah. Of course, you're going to have broken people in it. Like, what do I expect? But you just come along with this like non-ladder mentality. And I think that's why I've always wanted to just work for my dad, because I can trust your leadership. I can trust that, it's not you I'm following Jesus by following you, which I have to have my own, follow Jesus, of course. But like, I know even when like, I don't see like the vision and where we're going, I know that you do, because you'll never make a move if God's not in it. And I feel like it's not rare, but it's rare for people to find to the point they can trust. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think I appreciate all that. That's my attempts. I don't. No one bats 1,000.
For
no
sure.
one gets it right all the time. I probably have a laundry list of mistakes more so than I do successes. I had heard a phrase one time that I never have forgotten, and I love the idea. I love the concept of it. And it said, speaking of that ladder, be careful who you step on your way up, because you're going to pass them on your way back down. And I heard another pastor say, it comes from my life verse. My life verse is, humble yourself under the hand of God. In due season, He will exalt you and He will lift you up. I think that works in every aspect of life. It will work in business. It will work as a student relating with their parents, parents relating with their bosses, pastors relating with their people relating with leadership. That if you will humble yourself under the hand of God, in due season, in the right time, He will exalt you and He will lift you up. Now, here's the thing. If I'm lifted up, I know God did it.
Right, yeah.
And if God did it, then God's responsible to keep me there, and God can take me back down. But if I lift myself up, I've always got to push other people down to keep myself lifted up. I just think that's a train wreck for leadership. I also think that's the reason why our country's in the way it is. And I think we need to have conversations around the table and then go beyond it and live that out.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's just kind of my heart for this podcast. And it's going to kind of be a smorgasbord and bring different voices, different approaches, different aspects. And so to the table each week.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's crazy that I was the first guest here on this side of things instead of, hiding behind the camera. Were you surprised that I said yes?
I was shocked that you said yes.
I was shocked I said yes.
But I was so excited that you said yes, because I also think that you undervalue what you have to say, that you undervalue your voice, your experience, and you just bring so much more to the table than you give yourself credit to.
And I think that's a huge thing too. And like, out of this, like, you can teach people is like, I always feel like I need the answer for every little thing before I step up. Yeah. And that's never going to happen. No. And leadership and Jesus and all of it, it's like, you're not supposed to know anything. Yeah. You're supposed to just be like, maybe be prayed up a lot, hoping for the best. Yeah. And then when you step up, you're just like, I hope this works out. Jesus got me. And that's that. I feel like that's a lot of times where a lot of people stunt themselves in their growth. Yeah. Is they're like, they don't trust.
Another thing I want to elaborate on our next podcast a little bit is this idea. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, I figured out your style of leadership. I said, okay. And this was 30 years ago. He said this. He said, you're a color by number leader. And so I felt a little, insulted, and he said, no. He said, I want you to understand. He said, you see the big picture, and then you bring everybody's little box of crayons to the table. Yeah. And you don't expect everybody to have a 64 count box. Yeah. And so what I know is I come to the table and I got 4 crayons in my box. That's it. I got the smallest box that's out there, but other people bring their crayons, their experience, their knowledge, their background, their hurts, their pains, their successes, their value to the big picture. And when you understand that, that allows them to fill in the places within the vision. The guy who knows it all, the 64 box people kind of make me nervous. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a future podcast, we'll talk about that and expound on it a lot, because I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And so what I kind of want to do is give you an opportunity to join us every Friday at 4 o'clock. We'll be dropping a new episode of Beyond the Table, and I look forward to some great conversations with a lot of different guests in the future. Hope you have a great day.